you don't always walk out of a therapy session feeling good. And that is not necessarily indicative of that therapeutic relationship. I think if you have that person where you can really open up and be truly yourself and honest about what you're experiencing, there are going to be times when they might challenge you. They may bring up something, or you may discover something that can be painful.
Hello, and welcome back to You Need a Counselor podcast. The floating voice you're hearing is Dr. Julie Johnson. I am having an allergic reaction to the animal shelter today, so I'm not on video today. But if you're listening on Spotify, who cares? I am Dr. Julie Johnson. I'm the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions. We're still doing telehealth counseling via the internet, phone, anywhere in Iowa, and in any of our 6 office locations across Iowa.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt. I am the Vice President in charge of the BHIS department at Heart and Solutions. So BHIS stands for Behavioral Health Intervention Services, and that is the program where we go in home and work with children ages 4 through 18 on different behavioral skills. And we can also see them telehealth across the state of Iowa right now too. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
Yeah, so we post on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Central Time. So be like Chrissa and I, just batch up your clean laundry or any other task you hate doing. You can put away that clean laundry. You can make outfits. You can ball up your socks. Do all of those terrible, annoying things on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. While you listen to the new episode that week. That gives you that entire week to get scheduled with your counselor, to start the process of getting into counseling services, or to get in touch with our guest or resource from that week. So Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Central, you can watch us on YouTube, or you can listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, just a reminder that we do have our new Patreon service going. If you are a counselor that is listening and you need play therapy CEUs, either live ones or recorded, go ahead and visit us at patreon.com/Heart and Solutions. There you can sign up for all of our recorded play therapy CEU trainings, or you can sign up for our monthly live trainings as well. So go ahead and get your play therapy CEUs over there on Patreon. All right, so today we have a guest from Fall River, Massachusetts, my home state. We've got Julia Nepini here with us today. And Julia is a clinical and a forensic social worker. She has 2 companies. She has the Compassionate Counseling Company and the Compassionate Consulting Company. So she works individually with people who are doing counseling services, but also works with businesses and companies and agencies that are expanding their processes or even just starting out in this field. So welcome, Julia. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me and for this venture period. I'm very passionate about this topic, and I'm thrilled that people have this to listen to, and we're spreading the word because mental health services are definitely needed. I feel like we're in a crisis right now. So the more people that are open to it and willing to do it, the better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So tell us more about the mental health crisis that we are in right now. How are you guys experiencing that in Massachusetts?
So I feel like it has been a long-standing problem, but the pandemic made it so that it was unavoidable. Yeah. And now that there is more access, which is a beautiful thing, I think that all of us can relate to some of the symptoms that come along with depression and anxiety. So even if we are not necessarily diagnosed with those conditions, we can all relate to what that feels like from our experience with COVID-19. And there are just not enough providers out there to serve and meet the need. And so for us, we have expanded exponentially at our practice. So from May 2021 until now, we're up to 16 clinicians. So that's like from the time I started hiring until now. Our waiting list is in the multiple hundreds right now. We actually had to stop taking people because it never feels good to turn anyone away, and we'll always provide resources for other providers. But I feel like everybody is maxed out. The waiting lists are longer than ever, and it's more difficult for people to get those services, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, wow. That is a huge waiting list, especially with 16 providers too. How did Compassionate Counseling Company get started then? Where did you guys come from? How'd that start?
So I have been a therapist ever since my internship in graduate school, and worked in community mental health and a group practice, and decided to start my own solo part-time in February 2017. I was working in a hospital at the time and had that predictable salary and incredible benefits. And so I started it slowly. And 2 years later, I felt comfortable to take the plunge and leave that full-time job. And I've never looked back. So I hired my first full-time employee in February 2021, and here we are.
Awesome.
How was that hospital work that you were doing? How is that different from the counseling services that you're providing now at Compassionate Counseling Company?
The hospital work was incredible. I feel like it was such a good experience in terms of getting exposure to working on a multidisciplinary team, understanding the medical side of this profession. So I have experience now with home care services, nursing home placements, oncology, a lot more experience with the psychiatric inpatient realm of things. So it was just exposure to everything and working collaboratively. So it was invaluable experience, but it wasn't the same, obviously, as therapy. So we would go in and complete consults for individuals that had identified social issues, and that could be quite the range. And then the role very quickly transitioned to case management. So not only were we seeing those clients that had social issues, but we were also providing assessments for every patient in the hospital. So setting up all of those services when they got discharged or transitioning to them to that next level of care. And so it definitely was still social work, but not at the end when I left the same as what I had signed up for in the beginning. And I really enjoyed the one-on-one counseling piece because I felt like I was able to make more of an impact. We would get to see a patient maybe once, twice, if we were lucky, throughout their hospitalization. And unless they were readmitted, that was the extent of our work. And so as much as the referral that we made might have been helpful, or that connection or that support might have benefited them, it was on a whole different level than when you can provide one-on-one counseling.
So what population do you work with now then at Compassionate Counseling Company? So
I was seeing clients of all ages when I carried a caseload, and primarily couples. Without necessarily intending this, I did a lot of the Gottman trainings. So I completed levels 1, 2, and 3, and really enjoyed that dynamic of having two people in the session with very different perspectives, upbringings, narratives. It was always interesting. You never knew what to expect. It kept you on your toes. And then in October of last year, the year before last year, so a little over a year ago, I transitioned my caseload to the other clinicians in my practice and really focused on this practice ownership role, which there's a lot that goes along with that, and the consulting. And I'm also a forensic social worker, as you mentioned. So I'm a trained divorce mediator and a parenting coordinator, which is a professional that helps parents post-divorce or separation navigate a lot of those aspects in their parenting plan that can be challenging. So I've focused on all of those endeavors and do not see clients for therapy any longer, but provide supervision.
Awesome.
Wow. And you are a multidisciplinary group. So you mentioned the family piece, the couples piece. What other services are you providing there?
We definitely serve the whole family for sure. And we provide groups. So that is a fairly newer endeavor. And that really came out of not only interest from the clinicians in the practice and their areas of specialty, but also from this need that we saw heighten amid the pandemic. And it never felt good having people on the waiting list for an extended period. Mm-hmm. So we were thinking, how can we still provide services and get these individuals support, but do it in a way where we could have them seen quicker? And there are so many benefits to group therapy, and we had a lot of success with that. So we currently have a trans family and friend support group that will be starting. And we have had gender spectrum support group. So we definitely consider ourselves allies and have identified that as a population that could really benefit from increased support. But we've run adolescent coping skills groups, girls empowerment groups. We have a motherhood empowerment group. We have a lot of clinicians that specialize in that postpartum period. So that has really helped broaden the scope a lot. And then obviously the forensic social work piece. So the mediation and parenting coordination is under that umbrella as well.
Cool. So then from there, you started the Compassionate Consulting Company. So now what do you do with that company?
That is helping other clinicians do what I have done. So starting their own practices, expanding to group practice, if that is something that they'd like to do, diversifying. So going beyond just the one-to-one relationship in therapy, but broadening that scope. Podcasting, I recently started my own. It's called The Compassionate Climb. And it is really a culmination of everything that I've done. And so it's for those that are interested, obviously, in mental health, but also in the business side. And how can you be successful, but also maintain integrity and compassion and those core values that are really important to me, because it can be challenging at times. Mm-hmm. So that diversification piece is helping others to add consulting, forensic social work, the groups and workshops, all of those additional things that we have the skills to do and really help keep the work interesting, enjoyable, and really fuel those passions that we all have as clinicians.
Yeah, it becomes a totally different skill set. A lot of times we'll start out in the field and we go get our master's, we go get our license, and we have that one-on-one individual counseling, come sit in my office kind of idea or picture. And then as we continue in this field, there are all of these other opportunities for ways that we can use those skills. I always say counseling skills are 100% transferable skills into these other pieces. Mm-hmm. And then when we start to lead others, either through clinical supervision or licensure supervision, or in an administrative capacity where we're supervising other people, that's a totally different skill set that we then have to adapt. And sometimes that skill set can feel at odds with our counseling skill set. And so it is a balance it's a tug of war a lot of times between those counseling skills and that training that we've had in counseling, and then those leadership skills and those accountability skills that need to be there, those boundary skills that sometimes look a lot different in the counseling world. And so bringing those two together is a very different kind of marrying of skills, and it becomes a whole new skill set. You have your leadership side and you have your counseling side, and it kind of marries into this brand new skill set of behavioral health leadership or counseling leadership. And it is very interesting seeing those pieces kind of come together as somebody starts out in this field and goes, I'm really great at counseling. Mm-hmm. Now what do I do? How do I become a leader in the field? So very, very different. So did you always think that you wanted to have your own counseling agency, or was this something that kind of naturally evolved for you?
Natural evolution for sure. So I love what you said about how there are a lot of differences, commonalities and similar skills, but then this kind of advanced skill set when you go into the leadership. And I'd also add business is a totally different realm and something that's been a huge adjustment for me. So what I would say is that they all just kind of built on top of each other. I feel like I always had that desire to be in a leadership role, working in multiple different settings. I always sought out supervision and was always open to feedback and was willing to learn, and had some great experiences, but also had some experiences that left some things to be desired. And so for me, I'm an Enneagram 1. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that personality test. So that's the reformer, perfectionist. And so my mission on this planet is, during my time here, I want to do the best work that I can. I want to leave the world better than when I came, and I want to do things right. And it definitely goes against my grain when, people are not necessarily doing things ethically or following the rules. And that's not to say that I can't take kind of situation by situation and make adjustments, obviously, but I wanted to make sure I was doing things right. And so for me, I went on for my master's immediately after undergrad, and immediately took the steps to get independently licensed. And I knew that private practice could come from that. So it was always in my mind, but wasn't necessarily the end goal. And it really morphed from my experiences working for a community mental health agency, another group practice, a hospital, a nonprofit, working in crisis. And from all those experiences, I wanted autonomy, I wanted flexibility, I wanted to be able to practice within the guidelines, but in a way that worked for me. And I ultimately found that the only way that I could do that was my own practice. And then once I established it, it can be really lonely and isolating. And I missed being a part of a team. And so what better way to solve that problem than to create a team? And the focus was really, if I'm going to bring someone on, I want to make sure this is the type of practice I would want to work for, that I took all of those things that worked for me in other places and adopted that, and then made sure to really hone in and fix and shift and shape those things that did not work. Providing quality supervision, making sure that everyone feels supported, coming together as a team, being open, honest, and transparent about my decisions and the growth of the practice and where we're headed, taking feedback, and open door policy. If there are things, we recently created a client satisfaction survey. We have a clinician satisfaction survey. We hired a human resource consultant. So clinicians will have the opportunity to meet with her at regular intervals and provide feedback about their experience at the practice. When we hire, we allow those clinicians to not only come and tour our space, which is beautiful and we're so proud of, but meet with another clinician and have that opportunity to ask the candid questions. And what is it like to work for compassionate counseling? Not just hear it from me. So those are some of the things that we do that I think really set us apart, and are those pieces that I made sure to put in place because of my experience.
Awesome. So do you guys have one office location? Are you expanding, or what are your goals with that?
So we started off in one location and it worked really well in the beginning, but we outgrew it. So we expanded and moved to a bigger location last October. And so we're now in a 10 office suite. We take up the whole second floor of our building. And it is such an upgrade. We have a waiting room, we have a conference room, we have a kitchen. So there's a common area for the clinicians to go in between sessions. We've been able to have workshops there, and we have a space for groups. So it really has been such a positive experience for all of us. And the clinicians have spoken about the culture and the team, and how, even though we were trying to do that virtually, nothing really compares to them being in each other's presence throughout the day.
Yeah.
It sounds like your group kind of was born out of this need for, well, I know the place I want to work and I haven't found that. And so I need to create that. And that was Chrissa and my story too. We worked together previously and we went, why can't it be this way? And we said, if we're going to work at the place we want to work, we're going to have to create that place. And it really is that. I think that's where creativity and creation really comes from, is that need or that vision of, this is what I want it to feel like. And it sounds like when you're intentionally building the atmosphere of your organization and the values of your organization, you are you're doing those very intentionally based on feeling. How does it feel to work here? How does it feel to do these things, which in the study of behavioral health leadership is so important. It's all about feel. When Chrissa and I interview, it's about how does it feel to be in session with this person. And so those feelings are so important. And to be in behavioral health leadership, we have to approach things differently than if we made socks. And a lot of times in business or in business decisions, we'll go, okay, this is the decision that makes sense. This is the decision that if we made socks would be open and closed, an easy decision, like, that the sock factory decision. And then there's the decision that we're making that our CPA doesn't always understand or agree with, but it's the we don't make socks decision.
Well, and there's also so much gray area in the work that we do inherently as behavioral health providers. There's the guidelines that you follow, but then there are unique situations that come up all the time, and you could line up several practitioners and they could be anywhere on that spectrum. So I find that piece of it fascinating, but you're right. It's very different questions that come up for us than other businesses or professions.
So how did you get started in that like divorce mediation, parenting side of it? Where'd that play in?
So I went through my own divorce. My daughter was 2 and we used a mediator, and I had a really positive experience. I had never really had any exposure to family law, and navigating co-parenting on a daily basis, even with a wonderful parent, still has its challenges. So when I discovered that as a licensed mental health practitioner with additional training, I could mediate those divorces and serve as a parenting coordinator where I'm using my own skill set as a therapist, but also these additional skills that I learned from the mediation training, conflict resolution and negotiation. But it's really about emotion regulation and helping these parents who can get very triggered by one another, keep the focus on their children and work through to get to a compromise. It just seemed like the perfect blend of my personal and professional life. So that's how that came about. I had just been doing some research one day and I had found a blog post about parenting coordination, and that was it. I found a training and immediately took it and have been hooked ever since. It's challenging work for sure. It's something that can very quickly lead to burnout if you don't have a good support system. I mean, you're dealing with people that can't stand each other. And even with the best skills and the maximum supports, may never be able to manage this relationship without assistance. But you just have to be really clear about how many cases you can take at any one time. Make sure that you're networking and you have your go-to people in the field that can help to support you. But it is such worthwhile work. And it's ultimately for these children so that they can be shielded from that conflict as much as possible.
Yeah. And I'm hearing this pattern in your professional journey where you're taking the things that were important to you, you're taking the experiences that you had, and you're using them to help other people do the same. And to help lead other people along the journey that you have been able to create for yourself. And so you mentioned that you had a great counseling experience. How did that counseling experience go, and how did that contribute to your current profession?
Counseling experience? Do you mean the mediation?
Your own counseling experience where you did the mediation. How did that contribute to your current career?
So I think the mediation experience definitely gave me exposure to how that works and the benefits of having someone that's trained in mental health, working with 2 individuals at such a transformative time in their lives. But specific to counseling, I am such a firm believer that we as therapists should be mandated to go through our own counseling. So I myself have sought that out at different points in my life, and it has been invaluable because it's that opportunity to really stop, pause, reflect, understand those patterns, what's really going on there. And I mean, it's similar to these other processes that we're talking about when people get triggered. We very oftentimes don't have that ability, even with the skills that we have and the training and the education, to pause when we are emotional and really see what is at the root of our behavior. And that's what therapy was for me. So the fact that I'm able to now link people to those services with therapists who are qualified to do this work, genuinely care, are compassionate, are empathetic, it's definitely a humbling experience. Like I'm in a position where like I never lose sight of where I came from and my journey. I'm very clear on my why, and I feel so blessed. Like you say, was this your vision? Did you anticipate all of this? No, I think it evolved, and I very frequently pause and look back, and I'm almost in disbelief a lot of the time.
Yeah. How was your experience as a counselor finding your own counselor? Is it trickier when you feel it yourself, or how was that?
I think it can be, because we are a small community in the grand scheme of things. And so if you practice close to where you live, the likelihood that you're going to have some sort of connection to that individual professionally is likely. So finding someone that could just be my therapist and that didn't necessarily know me in my professional life so that we could maintain those boundaries was tricky. But I also think we have maybe a different standard. So because we have practiced, because we've trained, you're looking for something that I think is hard to articulate. The therapeutic relationship, as I'm sure you both know, is really paramount above all else. I mean, yes, techniques and modalities are important, but if you don't have that solid relationship with your client where they feel like they can be who they are, be their true self, be honest, be open, and feel like you are truly there for them to understand their journey on this earth, however it has played out for them, it's not going to work. Mm-hmm. And so to find that and capture that can be really hard. And reading somebody's profile or looking at all the letters after their name is not always going to be indicative of how you're going to feel, going back to what you said, when you're sitting across from them in a session. So yeah, it's challenging. Plus, what I was saying before about this crisis where there are just such limited providers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think when we're looking for a counselor, somebody who isn't familiar with the field, who hasn't maybe done counseling before, doesn't know what all these letters after people's names are, right? And like, are you going to try to give me medicine right away? And just all of these questions that people have when they start in counseling. I think that what you're saying can be a very reassuring thought and statement of, it is all about how you feel. You don't have to go looking for, I need somebody that can do this technique or that technique. I need somebody who, that process, if you start with somebody and you are working through and you've built that relationship and they go, this technique might be useful to you, they can help refer you out to somebody else who can maybe do that specific technique. But that main focus when you're going into a counseling situation is, how do I feel when I'm sitting in the room with this person? Do I feel comfortable? Do I feel safe in here? No matter if that person is an intern or a doctor, how do I feel is that most important piece. And those additional techniques, if just because your cousin did EMDR and thought it was great, doesn't mean that you have to do that and that you have to find somebody who is qualified to do that specific thing. You can absolutely try that, but that main thing is, how do I feel in the session? Because that person is not there to prescribe these things to you. That person is not there to do these things to you in order to help you. This person is there to help you and walk you through doing those things for yourself. I like that you called it an opportunity. I like that. Well,
and one other piece too that I just think is so important to add in, you're saying like how it feels, and I agree. But I think the reason why that foundation is so important is because I'm sure the two of you can relate to this as well as your listeners, that you don't always walk out of a therapy session feeling good. And that is not necessarily indicative of that therapeutic relationship. I think if you have that person where you can really open up and be truly yourself and honest about what you're experiencing, there are going to be times when they might challenge you. They may bring up something, or you may discover something that can be painful, but that you ultimately, if that is the right person for you at that particular stage in your life, then you're going to come back and you're going to let the dust settle, and you are going to continue to go through that process and feel confident that that person is the one that can help you. But yes, that feeling of comfort and that person being understanding and compassionate is invaluable.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that there's wait lists all over the place, and like you guys have even stopped taking clients now at this point, even on your wait list. So what can people do if they are to call in and there is a wait list? What suggestions do you have for people looking for counseling right now?
Well, what I recommend or encourage practices and agencies to do is in their own networking to have a list. So it's not just, I'm sorry, we're not taking anyone, we have a waiting list, or whatever the case may be. It's, here are some providers that I would recommend. But then I think for the clients themselves, don't give up. Things are changing all the time. So just because this past week we have decided that we're no longer able to take referrals, that can change at any time. People close out successfully. Clients may decide that this is not the appropriate time for them to seek out counseling. And so there are openings that come up. And I definitely encourage people to add themselves to as many wait lists as possible. And if you are putting it out there and continuing to try, you will ultimately get that help, even though it may be more difficult than it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And telehealth being an option can really help a lot of people. And that means that you don't have to go someplace that's down the street from you. You can attend someplace that is within your state.
Right.
And so that is an opportunity that wasn't there 3 years ago. And so taking advantage of that can be so helpful. And it is the responsibility of an agency. If you call in and they say, we have a wait list and we can add you to this waiting list, but here are some other places. It's that other places piece, and even that warm handoff sometimes is so important. But
Definitely.
like I said, just keep trying. So you've got the Compassionate Climb podcast. And what is the format of this podcast? What can people expect when they tune in to listen to it?
So we release episodes every Friday, and throughout the months, there will be one episode that is solo. So it's me kind of speaking to what is going on in the world of counseling and consulting and private practice. There will be an episode that is a consulting call. So these are from individuals that can either reach out to me or from my own consulting or practice experience. So getting questions answered about the business side of things. An Ask the Expert session, where we're going to bring people in that have some sort of connection to the business side. So an attorney, an accountant, a realtor for commercial property, all of those aspects that I have been mind blown. I am learning all the time, and it fascinates me. And then my favorite, which are the climb episodes, where it's people that are coming on, professionals, can be just in the business realm, can be in mental health, but not necessarily. And they're talking about their own journey. What was their climb on the career ladder? How did they get where they are? What motivates them? What are some of the biggest challenges that they've experienced in their professional lives? And then what does integrity mean to them? And how are they staying true to who they are throughout their professional journey?
That's awesome. That sounds really beneficial. Especially, I remember when we started, like, you have no idea what to do when you first are starting out as a brand new company.
It's so true. We learn so much as we go.
I don't know if we ever, I mean, do we ever get to a point where we feel like we
You
know
know
what
everything.
we're doing?
Probably not. So with the Compassionate Consulting Company, can you guys serve across the country, or is that specific to Massachusetts and Rhode Island as well?
Compassionate Consulting can open that door. I have been able to work with people from other countries, other states. Yes. So business is business. And so even though I will always advise people to reach out to their local, like in terms of business law, employment law, those types of things. But the structure of a business is pretty standard throughout. And so I have found that I have been able to help people regardless of where they're located.
Awesome.
It is so important to build that team around us. You talked about networking as a clinician and having those external coworkers that we can refer to and that we can send clients to for different services or different techniques, or if we have a wait list. And then when we are working as a business owner and running the business side of things, we do need that team. We need our attorney, we need our CPA, we need our realtor, and we need all of these people in our lives. So how do you recommend that people build that team up around themselves?
That's such a great question. And I now, looking back, would not be where I am without that team. And it's built just like my professional life has kind of built one thing on top of another. So I really just prioritized, and a lot of it is coming from my own experience and what I've learned and how helpful it has been to me. We will never know it all. And as much as I am a lifelong learner and always open to new things, the accounting I leave to the professionals. The legal stuff is for the professionals. And so, yeah, I just continue to find people and seek them out. And sometimes I've had to sort through multiple, like someone may have really served me in my business at one stage, but then when I progressed to another stage, I've had to seek out someone else. And so, yeah, I truly stand behind it, and it's what I've done. So a lot of the people that I'm bringing on the podcast are my personal go-tos. And so it's a way to really thank them, but give them that opportunity to really share the benefit that comes from utilizing those services and seeking them out.
I love that. It's trial and error. It really does mirror the experience of seeking out a counselor, trying different ones, seeing how it feels in the room. Do I feel safe? Do I feel connected?
Yes.
And when we're looking at a CPA or an attorney or an HR service or director to help our team or to fill in that space on our team, it really is a lot of trial and error. We interview people the same way we would encourage somebody to interview a counselor. Interview your CPAs, work with them on small projects and see how those projects go and see how their processes fit with yours. And if they don't and they can't be remedied, continue to look. And the same way for seeking a counselor for ourselves, that there is not one person or one agency that's going to fit that.
I couldn't agree more.
There are multiple.
Well, I think that's where the integrity piece comes in, and why that's such a focal value of my podcast, because it's so foundational in terms of who I am as a person, how I practice, how I am as a business owner. It's integrity, it's your moral compass. And I'm seeking that out, not only in the individuals that I hire on my team in the practice, but also in my team as a business owner. And if that is not there, then, or I discover in working with them that it's not there, then it's not a good fit and we move on.
Absolutely. I think a lot of times for people seeking counseling, if it doesn't feel right in that session, they think, oh, well, counseling isn't for me, or I'm not a person for counseling, as opposed to that counselor was not the right fit for me. And I think the same thing for business owners. There's a tendency to think attorneys, for example, right? Or like, we don't understand all the stuff that they do, just like they don't understand all the stuff that we do. And so there's a tendency sometimes to think, well, that's the attorney we've got, and if they do it this way, then we should change, versus this approach of, no, this is how we are, this is what we do, this is how we stand up, and finding a right fit for how we are versus trying to tailor ourselves to that team member.
Great point.
So when you were talking about, hiring your own team too, and looking for that in your own therapist that you're hiring, I'm sure it's the same everywhere. Hiring right now is so hard. So how is, what kind of things do you look for when you're hiring for your team, or how does that go?
Well, I think one of the things that I would strongly recommend to everyone is to get really clear on your why and your values. And so now when I hire that is where I'm coming from. This is what we value. This is how we operate. This is how we do things. Is that something that resonates with you? Can you see yourself working for a practice that ultimately embodies all of these characteristics? And I think bringing other clinicians in is so helpful too, because they get that real life experience of what it's all about. So yeah, I think ultimately now at this point, I mean, we have not put out any indication that we're hiring, and we are so fortunate that we get people through word of mouth, whether it's from our own clinicians, whether it's from other professionals in the community that will just send resumes and say, you know, I've heard about your practice and we'd like to learn more. And this is what I mean. I feel like I'm humbled on a regular basis that like clearly something is working, because that piece is incredible in the situation that we're in now. I mean, hiring is really hard, but we're at a point where we're not necessarily needing to hire. Like I've had to accept the fact that that need is always going to be there. It doesn't matter how many clinicians I hire, there will always be a waiting list. So I've had to really scale back and think to myself, what number or what feel works for us, and we're there. And one person can only oversee so many people.
Yeah.
So if we were to continue to grow, we'd ultimately have to bring on someone else in a managerial role.
Absolutely. It becomes, you know, our roles become, they go from individual clinician to supervisor of clinicians to supervisor of supervisors to supervisor of vice president.
Yes.
And so, you know, for us, we always say I need to be leveling up. If I'm a leader, I always need to be working towards promoting myself so that I can promote the people around me into what I was doing.
Yes.
And so everybody in the organization they have their next step up, and they have their person that they are training to do their job when they move up, because we have to be able to let go of that rung in order to reach up to that higher rung up there. And so training people and our leadership team, our jobs have become, yes, we're clinicians, and yes, we are doing clinical supervision work, but our job ultimately is creating leaders who can do that leadership work and do it in a clinical way. And it becomes so important to have those levels there and to know what our boundaries are. And what you're talking about, it sounds to me, you're talking about clarity, being clear yourself and being able to be very clear to other people so that they know whether they fit in that or not. And if they don't have the same values, if they don't see things the same way or want to do things the same way, being able to say, okay, but this is who we are. This is who we are going to be. And sometimes that means having, you know, for every 10 people we interview, we probably hire one, right? Or two, because we have to be so specific about who we're bringing onto our team. And it's beautiful that you're doing that kind of from the start as you build up both your leadership team around you in the business and your clinical team that are serving those clients. So
likewise.
Wonderful. So if you could give one suggestion to somebody who might be on the fence about starting counseling, what suggestion might you give them?
Do it. I truly believe that everyone can benefit at different stages of their lives. I mean, ultimately, it is a space and a time for you to really just be the focus. You know, life is so busy. We get so distracted. We have such full plates. I mean, it really is an opportunity for you to enhance your relationship with yourself from someone who is truly there to understand what life is like as you, as much as they can, not being you, and help you recognize some of those patterns that can be really challenging for you to pick up on sometimes, despite our best efforts.
Absolutely. We can't do it alone. And that I think is really a thread that we've heard from you throughout this whole episode, is that yes, you are the leader, it's your vision, you're driving it, but you're not doing it alone. You don't have to. And anybody listening to this episode, You don't have to do it alone. You can work with Compassionate Consulting Company if you're starting a business. You can work with Compassionate Counseling Company so that you can have somebody to walk through those personal challenges of life with. So that is beautiful. So thank you so much for being on our show today, Julia. This has been wonderful conversation. And we're just so glad to know that you are out there in Fall River doing this wonderful work.
The same goes for you both. I appreciate that you have this forum for people to hopefully be more open-minded about the therapeutic process and obviously the work that you're doing through your practice. So I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for the conversation. I am Julia Nepini and I need a counselor.
Awesome. Me too. So does Chrissa. We all do. Oh my goodness. And I love what you said about, man, it should be mandated that if we're going to be in this field, that we have consistent counseling because there is just so much that and we're not only processing our own stuff, but how other people's stuff presents itself within our own stuff. So I just think it's wonderful. So thank you so much, Julia, for being here. You guys can check out Compassionate Climb podcast for those different sorts of episodes and learning about the business side of this counseling field. You can also go to www.compassionatecounselingcompany.com for the counseling side and www.compassionate consulting company anywhere in the world for that consulting piece of it. So thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you.
If you are in Iowa, anywhere in Iowa, and you're interested in mental health therapy or in-home behavioral health therapy for your children, go ahead and give us a call at 800-531-4236. If you are a licensed counselor anywhere in the country and looking for play therapy CEUs, go ahead and check us out on patreon.com/Heart and Solutions.
And like Julie mentioned at the beginning, we post new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central. So save up your laundry or whatever task you hate doing that week and listen to us while you get that done. And we can help connect you with our guests from that episode that week as well. And if you have any questions for us, you can reach us on our Facebook page at You Need a Counselor Podcast, our Instagram at You Need a Counselor Podcast, or we do have a new phone number as well where you can leave an anonymous text or a voicemail, and we can answer those on our next episode. And that number is 515-650-3231. Okay, so I'm Chrissa Hunt.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.
Bye.